Hi, this is Misty from That's So Misty, and I am going to show you how I am making my face masks. The first thing you're going to need is a piece of cotton material, and you can either go and buy a fat quarter, which I found that you can get 2 full adult size face masks out of, or you can use a pillowcase. I've read online, I've done quite a bit of researching about it, and a pillowcase works just fine. And a really old pillowcase is actually nice and soft. I'm using a fat quarter today, and I have cut it to the length of 17.5 inches long and 8 inches wide. You'll also need a strip of material that is 2 inches wide. And you can get 2 of these and 2 of masks out of a fat quarter. That's why I like to use it. Very little waste out of that. So I cut a 2-inch piece of material and I folded it in half to form an inch. Then you're going to take your edges and fold it in to each other so it meets at that fold. And then you're going to fold it again. All the time you're ironing this and making a crisp crease. So now you have what's called a bias tape. I did not cut it on the bias because we are not going to go around anything. It's actually quite short. Here's a previous one that I have made, and you can see it's just a short little piece here. So you'll need a bias tape, and if you don't want to make it, that's fine. You can buy bias tape if you have that on hand. You'll need 2 inches of 12 inches of some sort of elastic. This is 1/4 inch flat. You can use the round, you can use white. I think there might be nude, whatever you want to use or whatever you can find at this point. The next thing you'll need for the nose bridge is a twisty tie. And literally it is a twisty tie. This is the one that I pulled out of an old surgical mask. And it is the length of a normal bread tie. The one that I'm using, I happen to have some floral wire that looked exactly like a twisty tie. So I cut it a little bit longer because that's what I preferred. But a normal bread tie will work. You'll need some clips, scissor, and something to pull your elastic through the casing. I have one of these that I use. It has a little hook on the end. But you can use a simple, safety pin. Sorry, I had it just a moment. So the first thing you're going to want to do is do something with these raw edges. They are not going to show, so it does not have to be perfect, but you just don't want to have the edges fraying inside the mask. So I have already pre-folded this down twice. So you fold the edge down once, I pressed it, and then folded it down again and pressed it. You do not have to do this. If you have a machine that does an interlocking stitch or a zigzag stitch, you can do that. Or you can just use a simple set of pinking shears and cut like right along that edge. But since I already did the work of folding, I am going to just run a stitch along that fold to hold it in place. Now this is just a pattern that I like. I have tried several different kinds, and this is the one that I like the best. It's probably not the easiest one. I think the one that Deacon has just uploaded is probably the easiest if you're a new beginning sewer. Before I get too far along, I didn't mention that this is optional. This is something that I do. You probably noticed it when you saw it. I have cut a piece of non-woven fusible interfacing and put it here as to act as a filter. It's just a little bit extra barrier. You'll want to put it on the top side of whatever side you're wanting it to look like. So this is what I wanted to be out where everyone can see. So I put it on that side. You'll put it on the wrong side and iron it in place. Now there's also a sew-in kind. And so basically you would just cut it to go all the way to the edges of that, and that way it would get sewn in. I would probably cut it even a little bit bigger so you could possibly sew it in up here as well. But I like the fusible kind. It's what I had. I happened to find this in some stuff that was given to me, and I will use that when I run out of the iron-on kind. So that's why I've put that on there. That is optional. You do not have to do that, especially if you're making this type of mask. It does have a pocket, and so you can slip some sort of non-woven fabric in there. I've read that you can use a dried baby wipe, and that can act as a barrier as well. So after you've done something with your raw edges on either side, you're going to put that right side together and line up your seams. I do not pin anything at this point. We're just going to sew 1 inch here and 1 inch here. And I do a 5/8 inch stitch, and you can see that on your machine if you have a plate there. Most machines will show you. But I just do a forward and backward stitch about 1 inch to 1.5 inches on both sides, 5/8 from the edge. And the reason you don't want to sew all the way across is because you're trying to form that pocket that you can slip something in there. And like I said, that is optional. And if you don't want to deal with a pocket, look online on YouTube. There are plenty of DIYs on how to make a face mask. You can look on Deaconess's Facebook page, and I believe that they uploaded the one that they are accepting as well. So now that I've sewn that in place, the next thing you would do is you're going to want to iron it. Now some people like to go ahead and they lay this open as such, and they press that open. And you can do that. That's if you're especially if you're a newer sewer, then that would probably be the easiest way for you to do, and then you turn it inside out. I just kind of like to do it all at once. I turn it inside out. So that the pretty side is now out there. And then where I made the seam, I pull those seams open. And that way I can stick my finger in there and see where I need to make that casing for the top. So you can see I've got that pocket opening right there, and it is about 1/2 inch from the top. So that would cover up the seam. So I made sure those seams are open, and I'm going to take it to the ironing board, and I'm going to press the entire thing down. And you don't want to skip this step. You really want those nice crisp edges. It helps to keep everything where it needs to be. It just makes it easier. And something my mom always taught me is iron, iron, iron. Iron as you go. All right, so now that I have this iron and it's nice and flat and crisp, I'm going to take my nose piece or my twisty tie, and I'm going to run that in the top of that casing that I just made. And you'll see other people on their videos do it differently. I think you just have to find the method that works the best for you, and this just happens to work the best for me. So I press that all the way up against that crease, making sure that it's pretty even on both sides. And once you get it all the way up against that crease, I'm going to sew on the other side of that crease, kind of making a channel for that. And you just want to hold it in place. You don't want it moving around to the whole, that whole opening there, because that's just too much movement and it won't stay in place good on your nose. So we want it to stay right where it is, and you can see now it's moldable. All right, now flipping it over where the nice side that you're going to see, everyone will see, you flip that out to where you're looking at it. And I take my finger and I put it right there at that pocket, right below the pocket that I made. You can see that. Stick it right there at the below the pocket. And then I'm going to make a crease by putting my middle finger here, and I'm going to fold that down. So I'm making a pleat. And I like to use clips, but don't run out and get clips. If you have pins, you can use pins just as easy. You want to secure that edge. You're going to do that 3 times. You want 3 separate pleats, and they do not have to be the same. I eyeball it. If you are that personality that has to have that precision, you go right ahead and you measure. But I found that this is quicker, especially for the amount of masks that I'm wanting to make. And I've learned to just kind of eyeball it. So this is my 3rd and final crease. You want 3 because that tends to make it fit just a little bit better. And really the whole thing is you want a nice snug fit around the face. So if you find that this size is not fitting, or maybe the elastic isn't right, just make some adjustments. So I have this pinned. You can see that there's pleats, and I'm going to take it to the machine and I'm going to sew along both of these edges, removing the clips. You do not want to sew over the clips. They will break your needle. But I sew a 5/8 inch stitch along the edge, and I do always back up my seams. So forward and backward and sew along that edge at 5/8 of an inch. I don't know if you can hear our neighbor's rooster in the background. I get to hear him every day. I love it. Some people would find it annoying, but this particular rooster is their 2nd rooster. I loved their first one too. His name was Taco, which I thought was funny because it was chicken taco. But unfortunately, he met his early demise by a fox. So they got a new one, and I honestly can't tell you his name. But that crazy rooster says praise the Lord all the time, and it is so clear. I've never heard anything like it, and I've lived on a farm most of my young life, and we did have roosters, and I have never heard one actually say praise the Lord. So I trim the ends off because it's usually kind of wonky on those edges, and I want a nice straight edge. So that's what this looks like so far. Next, you're going to take your piece that you made for your bias tape, and I just do a little fold down because you don't want raw edges. And I'm going to fold it down and then take and lay that here. And I'm going to fold that over to where I am making a nice, pretty, crisp edge. And it will serve as a casing for my elastic. Now, some people like to sew their elastic into the corners, and that's fine, but I did find that it did not fit my face well. And maybe it's just my face, but I found that this actually fits me a little bit better. I'd love to have your feedback if you do purchase one of mine, or if you get one of mine, and let me know if it fits your face well, because everybody is built different. but I did not care for the one that I sewed into just the edge. But like, again, personal preferences. All right, so you're going to do that to both sides. So I have folded this over, clipped the end, and then I've gone down to this side, and you'll want to cut it to where it's like 1/4 of an inch longer so that you can fold that other side down. Again, I don't measure. You probably could, but I just eyeball everything. So you want to get that all good and tight up against there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew along that edge. And you need to catch both sides. Now, I know that there is probably an easier way to do bias tape. I have tried all the ways that I've seen on YouTube, and I struggle with bias tape. So I'm going to just sew along this edge. And if you are a seamstress and you know how to put on a bias tape or binding better than this, then you go right ahead. It's whatever works for you. So I've got one edge done, and now I'm going to go to the other side. I'm trying to watch the time because I am sewing before I start work. I get the privilege of working from home for the next week or so. And so I try to get a little bit of sewing in the morning, and then sometimes I'll do it at lunch because I can get 2 done usually during lunchtime. And then I can just get right back up and start going after I get done with work. So it's been very, very nice to get all this stuff done. So I've got my casings made, and now I need to get my elastic in, and I'm going to run my tool up through there. And with that fold, sometimes it can be tricky to get it through. So you get that tool in there, or if you want to use your safety pin, you would just hook it on the end just like I did that end, and kind of fish it through. We're going to see if this works first time, because I tell you, this hook on this wants to catch in that material inside there, and that is such a pain. All right, so we got it through. And the next thing you're going to want to do is just tie it and make a little bit of a knot. Now, if you knew that you were making it for yourself, you could knot it, measure, put it on, and see if you actually like that size. If you're making it for someone else like I am, I just knot this. Typically, if it was for me, I would actually sew the ends together so that I didn't have that knot. But when you're making it for other people, then you want to make it to where they can untie it and adjust it. So I just kind of loosely knot it. And I'm kind of on the struggle bus this morning. And then I take and trim my ends just ever so slightly, and then take a lighter and kind of singe those ends, and that way they don't fray out on you. So we'll do this to the other side. And truly, there's no rhyme or reason why sometimes it runs through there easy and why sometimes it's hard. I found it really just doesn't matter. All right, so we have this side done. And we're going to tie it the same way we did the other one. And don't pull it too tight if you're making it for other people, because that way they can untie it. And then I'm cinching those edges, and voila, we are done. You have your face mask. If you wear these, do not wear them more than 2 hours. You'll need to wash it every time. Taking precautions on how you handle it. After you handle your mask, please wash your hands for 20 seconds. If you do use a filter in the pocket, then you'll want to change it every time, and definitely wash your hands afterwards. So after you wash it, I would put it in the dryer on like a tumble dry low, and then after you get it out, you'll pull it taut and then iron it so those pleats will stay out. So there you have it. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Thank you, and that's Sew Misty.